Welcome back to the Mystery Garage. On today's episode, we have a lot of random stuff to do around the garage, a lot of work, everything from a little bit of 1.8T content, a little bit of VR6 content, quickly talk about the ABF build, and then we're going to get the VR6 car back in the garage and start talking about how we're going to make it into a drag strip car. So let's get to work. Welcome back to this week's episode of Mystery Garage. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in the cars you see behind me or have a passion for Mk1 Volkswagens, I highly recommend you subscribe to this channel because on this channel we've amassed a pretty cool collection and pretty cool variation of Mk1 Volkswagens. Everything from a 1.6 liter turbo diesel, a Mk1 VR6 supercharged swap. We also have what was soon to be a Mk1 1.8T cabriolet, and in behind it is our affectionately known car as Stepchild, which is a restoration car that I'm building, my dream car. It is going to be a 2-liter 16-valve ABF clone on carburetors. So each and every week we get to work on cars just like these, as well as some other cars that come in and around the channel. Before we kick off on today's episode, I really wanted to, address the fact of where has Stepchild been. Well, unfortunately, as you guys know, there's a lot of stuff going on in this channel, so recently I did have to move it out to the shop where it sits underneath the cover. The car is not forgotten, but the one thing we have shifted to is because summer is right around the corner, I did want to start to get the cars that can be street driven this summer up in ship shape and ready to go. So everything from the turbo diesel, the VR6, as well as the 1.8T cabrio. Those cars, because they are currently driven between episodes by me, I really wanted to make sure we got those cars up to speed. As well as we're addressing in today's episode, there is some track time opening up to get the VR6 car out to the drag strip this summer. So I really want to make sure that's all addressed and we're having some fun doing that, whether that's in between episodes or on this channel specifically, because I do have some hard goals for the VR6 car. After we've kind of addressed these and I'm able to enjoy these cars for the summertime, we'll get back to work on Stepchild, but I promise you, it won't be that far away. It's still going to come in and out of the channel a little bit as we start to address some certain things before we do get it off to paint. But until that point, we got some cleaning up to do in the shop today, as well as we are going to pull in the VR6 car and talk about how we're going to turn that into a track car. More specifically, a drag car for the summer and what goals I have for it and even past the summertime. So let's get into today's episode. All right, if you tuned into last week's episode, you recognize the car behind me. This is our Mark IV 1.8T donor car. It was previously an automatic that had a blown transmission, so we picked it up as a donor for our cabriolet. In last week's episode, we pulled the engine out as well as the transmission, which transmission is now junk, but we pulled out the engine and a few other things that are going to correlate to our swap. So now we are done with this car. This car can actually be rolled out of the garage. And later on in last week's episode, I also mentioned too that I wanted to go out and grab some engine stands for the 1.8T, as well as I'm going to throw that VR6 that's in the corner of the shop up on a stand too, because that does correlate into later today's episode when we start talking about the plans for our drag car and what we got going on there. So right now, I'm going to hop to doing all that little bit of work and we'll check back in just a minute. The beautiful thing about cinema, what took me 45 minutes, roughly took about 30 seconds on camera. So what we have here, 2 engine mounts. Our engine stands matches the same one as the ABF clone there. And what we have here is we'll throw the 1.8T on this one and VR6 on this one. Way back in the day, I purchased a Fast Money Metalworks engine stand mount for a VR6. Now the beautiful part about that is it allows you to take the back of the block, that mounts to the back of the block, which allows you to do chains on a VR6 while it's on the engine stand. You can find a way around it on the normal mount, You can also drop the engine down on the ground and that sort of thing, but these types of style mounts, quite a few different manufacturers make these for the aftermarket, but it makes it really, really nice to work on these engines on the stand. So give me a few seconds, I'll throw this on the back of that block, we'll put that engine on this stand, and we'll go ahead and throw the 1.8T on this one. These mount fairly simple. I'll try and do this with one hand just to show you what I'm talking about. Go ahead and you just throw this one in. And the pin's in. There we go. So that's exactly how it'll hang on this on the stand. So it's just a better option than what we have there. All right, give me another 30 seconds and you'll see these engines stood up. Well, that didn't work out, which is a shame, but I forgot that Mark IV 1.8T thread pitch is different for the bell housing bolt up than it is for really anything else pre-Mark IV. I have a huge bucket of bolts. I thought I for sure would have something. I didn't even really think about it. Turns out I have something that's either too short or too long, so I don't have the exact bolts I need, so we're gonna have to hit the hardware store and grab what I need. But VR6 went up on the stand perfectly. I'll show you guys what we're talking about here. Pull it away from the wall. So there's the Fast Bunny Metalworks engine mount. Again, this bolts up where the Mark III normally has the engine mount. So you just unbolt that and bolt that up. I actually use the axle bolts from a Mark IV. Works perfectly. Length is nice and thread pitch is correct and everything, so that works up real nice. This is going to be fun building this engine. I got a lot of plans for that, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Unfortunately, we're going to circle back. Just got to run to the hardware store, but for now I'm actually going to bring in the VR6 Rabbit. We'll get to work on that and we'll hit the hardware store for this later on. What I need is this thread pitch in this shank size, which will be easy enough to find once I get to the hardware store, but for now, let's go get the car. Well, it seems like we're coming out just to get it just in time. It's actually starting to rain, so I haven't started this car in a few weeks, so let's hope it starts. Was there any doubt? Come on. Man, I love this car. It is extremely filthy. Look at the roof of this thing. Oh my God. It'll all come off. But anyway, it's from it raining a little bit and then the dust of the farm landing on it made such a mess. But let's talk about what I mean by saying it's time to turn this thing into a drag car. Well, there's a little bit of a story behind that, and it has about two sides to the story. Let's go back. I've been involved in cars or been interested in cars for absolutely as long as I can remember. Cars are my true passion, whether it's domestic, import, especially Euro. By far now my favorite, but growing up I was interested in everything. I was interested in big V8 domestic stuff. I was interested in drag racing. Pretty much anything that had to do with the car culture, caught my eye, grabbed my interest. And I just started, watching things like Hot Rod TV and all that kind of stuff way back in the day, reading magazines, going on the internet when the internet became a thing, looking at forums and going all over that kind of stuff. But really the early days was horsepower TV, Hot Rod TV, and reading magazines. And a lot of that stuff in North America, revolves around domestic V8s and blowers and drag racing and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of my interest. Then once I got of age to drive and that sort of thing, I ended up getting into a little bit of Euro cars. So that's where I bought my first Rabbit. And I started kind of driving around, doing the car show thing, doing the street scene thing a little bit, just not necessarily showing my car, but going to those events. And kind of street racing became a thing Friday and Saturday night. It wasn't necessarily street racing all the time, but it was just a huge meet, and the guys would branch off and go to little back roads and race. But that was all pre-Fast and the Furious, by the way. Once Fast and the Furious came out, there was a lot of heat brought on to that kind of pastime, let's say. So it kind of all faded off really quickly overnight. Locally around that time, a lot of the law enforcement and that sort of stuff were trying to find places to dissipate these people and find somewhere to go. So in partnership with the racetrack in my local area, they started something called Friday Night Street Legals. So what it was the racetrack opened, the drag strip opened on Friday nights, roughly from 4 o'clock till dusk, for a lot of people to bring who used to participate in kind of the street scene stuff to come out to the racetrack and do it safely at the racetrack. And that was pretty cool. It gave us a chance to people who had never seen a quarter mile, really for $5 or $10 a car, whatever it was, to go out to, you didn't see a lot of, you didn't get a lot of opportunity to hit the track. I think you got out 4 or 5 times in the whole night just because there was so many cars waiting to get onto the track. But nevertheless, you did get some experience getting onto a drag strip, hitting the lights, that sort of stuff, and seeing what your car could do in a quarter mile. I got into that a little bit, and shortly thereafter, I got into it. I shifted my interest into something else, and I didn't really stick with the drag racing thing. I moved on to something else. So I've always wanted to come back to that. I've always wanted to go back to drag racing, try something bracket, that sort of thing. And with this car, I've been searching to find something to keep this car spec built, let's say. When I first built this car, I built it to be an all-around car. I mentioned that many times. I have kids, a wife. The intention was to just build one car and to take this car, obviously the VR6 swap car, and just use it as an all-around car. Take it to shows, take it on cruises, maybe put a little bit of track time behind it through the street legal thing once or twice, but have it look very unassuming. Have it be a sleeper like it is. I didn't want to, when everything was closed up, I didn't really want any hints that the car was really modified in any way. And that's kind of the direction I took on this build, was to look completely bare bones. When it drove by, it sounded cool, but it didn't really look assuming by any means. Steel wheels, but huge brakes behind them, big engine, hood closed, couldn't see that. It's got factory seats in it, or did at the time. I moved to Recaros just for driver comfort, but then obviously you guys saw we took those out and put those in the Jetta. So now it's got the Jetta seats in the front of it. And I had made mention about 2 or 3 months ago on this channel, it was time to take this car to the next level. So after humming and hawing about what that next level was going to be, did I want to just make it a really aggressive street car? Or did I want to do something else with it? That I kind of decided, back in the day when I was into V8s and drag racing, there was a term called street strip. What that basically was a car that was basically drag strip ready, but was also insurable on the road. It means it has turn signals, lights, everything you would need to drive the car on the street. It could be insured, which means it passed safety inspections if anything got pushed down that road. But it was really built and developed to be a drag strip drag car. And so that's the kind of direction I want to take this. I want to take, the all-around car that I had built, interior and all that sort of stuff. I want to pull all that out. We're going to strip that from the car. We're actually going to put some drag wheels set up on here, some drag racing suspension. We're going to basically build the car up to be a drag car, but I'm going to keep it street legal, which means I can still drive it on the road. It's not going to be a dedicated drag race car. It means I'm not pulling the plates off, not uninsuring it and making it strictly track. It will be both. So the intention with this build, again, is in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, you know, over maybe 1 or 2 episodes, we're going to turn this car into a drag-ready street car. And then over time, obviously, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe even 5 years, we'll continue to develop the car. I want to see this car get into the 10s. And I know that's a ridiculous statement, but it's a light car, it's got big power. You know, whether this powertrain is going to take us there, I doubt it. To be honest, it's been so long since I hit a drag strip. Myself, even the lights, my reaction time is probably going to be brutal. I bet you the first time I'll run a 15 or 16 second quarter mile without question. I'll probably do that repeatedly 4 or 5 times. I think this car is probably mid-13s, maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing. And I really think it needs to go a long way, even to get it into the 12s or the 11s. So if down the road to get it to that 10 seconds means we're pulling the engine out, we're building that one on the stand, you know, we're slapping a turbo on it or whatever it takes, we are going to get this car as a channel. Mystery Garage is going to get this car into the 10s. And that's a commitment from me to you, and it's a commitment to myself as well. I think it would be cool to have a street strip, so a drag-ready street car that can be in the 10s. We're going to keep it front-wheel drive. Down the road, you know, 5, 6, 7 years, if we made this thing into some sort of synchro or quattro, that would be cool. But again, that's not the intention right now. The intention is just to get this thing out on the drag strip and see what it runs, and then continue to develop it. How the car hooks up, how the car, you know, gets off the line after it's hooked up, how quickly does it accelerate, what's our quarter mile time, what's our mile per hour. Really start to play around with the characteristics of how you make a drag car quick. So that's the point here. Reduce the weight inside the car. At some point in time, we're going to come across the tech point of where we're going to be fast enough we need to put a cage in it, but we'll worry about that when the time comes. This car does not currently have a cage. We're going to just worry about how do we get the car faster? What little money we put into the car, how do we get the car to keep going faster? I'm not going to go cage it right away and all that sort of stuff if it's going to come out of the gate and run a 15-second quarter mile. There's no point. We're really going to develop the car as the car develops its times. So as I get better as a driver and the car gets faster, we'll do some more setup things to the car. And as we start to hit, you know, the 12.99, 11.99, we'll start making big decisions when those times come about how we're going to modify the car further. What's the most important? Is the most important, you know, transmission setup and changing the diff and all that sort of stuff, and the gearing, is that the most important, or the most important put into, you know, boosting the application, all that sort of stuff, or is it into weight reduction, suspension setups? You know, where does the car go from there? Here's a couple pictures of what I want the car to look like. I do want it to look like a really nice build still. I don't want it to go full drag race, plastic windows, all that sort of stuff. Down the road we might go that route, but again, I want to keep this car a street car. So, you know, it does have to have turn signals, brake lights, you know, all that sort of stuff that would on the car, headlights, that sort of thing. You know, these cars are pretty much square boxes. They're not extremely aerodynamic. So some minor changes to, keeping it low and that sort of stuff. I have lips on this car already to reduce drag. So there's little stuff like that that will make changes to appearance-wise. But overall, it's just modifications to the mechanicals of the car, reduce the weight of the car, put a little bit of aftermarket stuff in the car. Right now it has rear seats. Obviously all those are coming out. Front seats. I don't know if you guys saw it, but give me one sec. My son and I, right before COVID, were involved in dirt racing. And actually just before COVID hit, I actually sold my race car and upgraded my son's. So actually, for somebody to ask, that's what all those trophies are from up there. Is actually not mine, they're my son's. He's done that in a little bit of he's had 2 or 3 years of racing behind him. And he's got, it's really cool how they set it up for the kids, but he races quarter midget first and then got into junior sprint racing. Anyway, long story short, I bought this seat right before I sold my car. This is a brand new full containment seat from Ultra Shield, and since I own it and it is brand new, we're gonna throw it in this car. As much as it is aluminum, and as far as does it look uncomfortable? Yes. Is it comfortable? Absolutely. I rode this thing with a very similar seat in my dirt car before on a dirt track that isn't smooth, and these actually are surprisingly comfortable. They fit really well, and what I'm hoping to do in this car is we'll modify the seat base, drop the seat down, and really make the seat perfect for me. It'll still be adjustable, front, back, we'll make it slide, that sort of thing, but ultimately this is the seat we're going to use in the car for the driver's seat. What we use for the passenger seat is still undetermined. But in today's episode, what we're going to do is actually tackle the interior first. We're going to pull out all the stuff we're not going to use. I'd be interested one day to weigh how much that stuff weighs. It's not going to be a lot, but every little bit counts in these kind of cars. We're going to keep the dash. I'm going to keep the carpet forward of the seats. Anything rear of the front seats is going to go. All the door cards, plastics, carpet, everything. All we're going to have is carpet in the front driver's seat, passenger seat. We'll put this racing seat in. I'll probably leave the other seat in there for now in the passenger seat. Once we take it out, got the interior, put the seat back in. Really just kind of finalizing the interior portion of this car. I already have some wheels and tires on order for this car, and that is going to require us actually to reduce the brake size. I talked about how we're going to use the brakes on this car, which are currently 11 inch. We're going to actually reduce them back down to allow a 13-inch wheel in the front, and that's because the choice of 13-inch drag slicks or street radials for a 13-inch tire are better fit for this type of fitment. If I went 15-inch drag radials on this car, your selection choice changes of how many choices you have because of the size of the sidewall. I can't run a 15-inch really tall sidewall tire because then it would smack everything on this car. So when you reduce to 13-inch, which is a lot of import drag racing wheel tire sizes, that's the best. And trying to fit brakes behind a 13-inch rim is a little bit tight, so we're actually going to hit up Momentum Motor Parts, and we're going to get a 4-piston Willwood set up to go behind it. So I do need to get that on order, but the wheels and tires are already on order. We're going to hopefully get those the next coming weeks or so, depending on shipping right now, and slap them on this car and really have a cool drag race wheel setup. And we're going to start picking on some other things to this car to really get this car cleaned up and get it ready for the drag strip. My intention is we're going to take you guys and this car and myself out to the drag strip and really have some fun with on-track footage, talk about drag racing, talk about getting this car faster, and everything about this VR6. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to build this as my backup motor. As I told you before, whether you remember it or not from a previous episode, this engine, when I built it, was really just built to get in the car and get the car running and driving. This is still a factory bottom end, factory top end VR6. I've done some ignition changes, obviously, as you can see, put the supercharger on it, done a couple other external modifications, but this is still a long block factory VR6 2.8 liter. So, and it's got some age behind it. It's got its valve seals are leaking a little bit. It does smoke a little bit under heavy load, that sort of stuff. So this engine at some point will probably retire, and we will then in the meantime be building this on the channel. We're going to do something cool with this, whether I build this up to be a boosted motor or what have you. That still hasn't yet to be determined, but this will definitely probably be bored out, whether we decide to put a 2.9 stroker kit in it or do something crazy. Again, undecided yet, but this will be our backup drag motor that we will build this motor up and then really just swap the motors. We'll pull the other one out, put this one in, bolt all my accessories to it, and away we go. So that's the plan. That's why I've pulled this motor out of hiding. It is very dusty, but it is time to start thinking about this drag setup. Again, we're still going to carry on with this 20 valve in the Cabrio, and we're going to start kicking back off on this 2-liter ABF build. This is stalled for a little while just because we had some decisions to be made about how we were going to get crank trigger and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to actually make some changes. We're going to pull this motor back apart, make some changes back to the bottom end, put the 2-liter ABA, a brand new 2-liter ABA oil pump back in it, put the intermediate shaft back in it, go back to ABA bottom end guts. Then we're going to go ahead and keep those ABF pistons in there. We're going to put ARP stuff down in the bottom end of it, which I didn't currently put in it. Then we're going to go ahead and slap this head back on and really build this thing up. And we're almost at that point where I'm ready to do it. Got a couple parts on order. We're just waiting for those to come in. So that's kind of the update on the 16 valve. A lot of you guys have been asking, where's the ABF? Where's the ABF? This engine is coming back. I've already placed the order for the parts. We just need them to come in and we can bring this thing back. So we got a ton of engine content. And for you guys who, I can look at the analytics of this channel. A lot of you guys are really interested in engine stuff, and it just so happens that's where we are on this channel currently. We got a lot of engine stuff going on. So for any guys who are interested in the VR6 stuff, there you are. Anybody who's interested in the 1.8T stuff, there you are. Anybody who's interested in 16 valve stuff, it is all coming to you very quickly. This 8 valve is going to have to find a new home in the bin at some point because it doesn't belong. But as far as that goes, guys, there's a ton of stuff coming on this car, and I am super excited about it. But before we check out on today's episode, let's gut this interior. All right, guys, I apologize. We are going to have to end it there. We are out of time for today's episode. I am not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. We're going to open the door and start gutting the interior on this car. But I'm going to have to bring that to you on the next episode because we have used up the time we have here today. So thanks very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Expect a ton of stuff coming on this channel. We're going to have the VR6 drag car. We're going to start building that. We're going to start looking at the 1.8T in the Cabrio. We're also going to bring the ABF and get Stepchild back in here because there is a lot of work to do. So until next time, guys, thanks very much. Looking forward to it. We're going to hop back into this right now and keep going. So until next time, take care.